Start in Redcliffe, where a family there has been shattered and left with questions after the death of a loved one. As Tiffany Goodwin reports, the questions arose when a life-saving surgery never took place due to COVID-19.
I sat there for a long time, a week, watching him. It's very hard. I don't wish that on anybody.
A mother's pain for the son lost so tragically. A son named Jerry that was a loving partner, friend, and father to two little girls. He was a gifted musician, here playing music with his band back in Ontario. But roughly 18 months ago, Jerry started noticing some heart issues and was hospitalized.
He thought maybe he had pneumonia or something. His chest was feeling a bit heavy.
Unable to work, Jerry moved to Redcliffe to be with his parents and to focus on his health. Once here, doctors determined that he needed a pacemaker. And in April, Jerry went in to set a date for surgery. But the province pressed pause on elective and non-urgent surgeries in March as part of their response to COVID-19.
The answer was, this has been deemed non-essential surgery from the government. Call us in 1 to 2 years. We'll reschedule it within the next couple years.
Jerry couldn't get the surgery he needed.
So he was very, very frustrated. He goes, what do I do now? What am I supposed to do now? We didn't have any answers.
Weeks later, Jerry suffered a cardiac arrest. Jerry passed away on June 7th. His death leaving his family shattered and wondering if things could have been done differently.
In my opinion, yes, at 100%, 99.99999% preventable death. It's a shame he fell through the cracks.
They let the sick people waiting for other people to get sick. And that just shouldn't have happened.
Now, as band members pay tribute and his family grieves, they're now hoping that Jerry's story will lead to change so that those waiting for non-essential surgery during a pandemic will be able to get the help they need faster and before it's too late.
It's very hard. I feel sorry for anybody who would have to go through this. It's very hard.
Tiffany Goodwin, Chat News.
Hello, freedom fighters. Welcome to another podcast episode on the Angry Albertan channel. We have a very special guest tonight. We've got with us Krista Lambier. She is the former partner of Jerry Dunham. And Jerry Dunham was, in my opinion, I don't even know how else to say it. Alberta Health Services murdered this guy with their bogus COVID-19, canceling of what they were calling elective surgeries. Jerry needed a pacemaker. Apparently, he needed it right away, and they canceled it due to COVID and just left him to die, basically. I mean, he did get into the hospital, ended up on life support, and now the mother of his children is a totally single parent. And those two children are without a father. And, I don't know what to say, but I'm so sick of this COVID-19 malarkey. Here we are bending over backwards to save every 83-year-old in a care home by locking them in solitary confinement for 8 months straight, just so that they can die in the next flu season. And all the while, people like Jerry Dunham and his entire family just completely left out to dry. I think this is a really important story to get across to folks. A lot of people are scared of COVID, but there's real threats out there that are way more dangerous than COVID. And the government is just basically throwing people to the wolves. And so without any further ado, let's bring Krista on the program here. Krista, welcome to the Angry Albertan podcast. How are you today?
Hey, Josh. Thanks. I'm not doing too bad, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about Jerry, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I call him Ched. So when I first met him, we were actually playing pond hockey on Jackson Lake up in the Yukon. I was from Ontario. He was from Alberta. And so I thought his name was Chad. I was corrected super quickly that it was Ched. And then I over the next couple of months, learned that he was actually a well-known professional musician up in the Yukon. And so we started hanging out, and we spent 10 years living together, partly in the Yukon, in a cabin on the edge of a lake, no running water, outhouse out the back, blue jugs on the kitchen counter. Our first girl was born up in Whitehorse, actually, and then our second daughter was born down in Stratford, Ontario, in Ontario, where we lived for 4 or 5 years together. And then we kind of went our separate ways about a year and a half ago, but no lawyers involved. And we still went out for family suppers with the four of us. And Jerry, Ched, I'm going to call him Ched probably the whole night here, but he had a house, or got a house a couple of streets over from us, and the kids would go back and forth, whenever they wanted. Pretty mellow, easy to get along with person, to be honest with you.
And so when did this heart issue crop up?
Right. So so I would say about 2 years ago, almost exactly right now, he started we were in Ontario, and he would call me, and because our girls were going to be coming over to his place, or we were going to go to the park, or we were doing something, and he would call and say, I don't think I can go, or I don't think the kids can come today. And I was like, okay, what's up? And he said, I'm not feeling well. I think it might be pneumonia. I'm not sure. I'm so out of breath. And so he ended up going up to our local hospital. And to make a long story short, he was in and out of there maybe 4 times over the course of a couple days, not being able to breathe and short of breath. And they said, maybe it's pneumonia, maybe it's this, maybe it's not that. And they sent him home. And then finally he couldn't make it up the stairs, and he called a friend of mine, and she took him up to the hospital because he couldn't even drive. And which is like 2 minutes away, very, very close to us. And anyways, it was a different doctor. And immediately he did an ultrasound on his heart, or his chest, realized it was his heart, admitted him right away, where he spent a week in the hospital, in our town's hospital, due to this heart condition. And then maybe a week and a bit into it, they shipped him down to St. Mary's Hospital in Kitchener, Ontario, which is known as a heart specialist or heart specialty hospital, where he spent a couple weeks in the ICU. We thought we lost him about November 2018. His family actually flew in from Alberta. We were worried he wasn't going to make it till Christmas. He was catheterized through his neck. We didn't bring the kids in right away because he was hooked up to all of these machines. They found him on the floor a couple times where he had passed out, couldn't get his heart rate down under 140. They were doing all of these different drugs. We haven't been on any kind of medications ever. Like we didn't even have Tylenol in the house at the time. Sorry to name drop, but we didn't have anything in the house. So all of a sudden he found himself in the hospital on a whole new mitt full of prescribed medications that weren't regulating his heart at all. So they were kind of playing with different combinations to see what they could do to get it to regulate under 100 beats per minute. And then they decided in Ontario, he couldn't go back to work. No doctor would sign off on him to go back, simply because the liability, they didn't trust the medications to be keeping his heart going in a routine the way it should be. And so he was off work for, quite a while, was on some short-term disability, hoping to figure things out. Pacemaker was on the radar then, probably 18 months ago in Ontario. He ended up losing his DZ license where he was working, which means dump truck, large motor vehicles, snow plows and such. So he lost that DZ license. Ended up losing his truck that he had bought because he wasn't working, wasn't able to pay his house bills. All of a sudden he was on almost $1,000 of new medication per month, wasn't able to pay those. And so he wasn't in a very good place, and ended up going back out west to Alberta to stay with his mom and dad, until he get this pacemaker and get his health back under check. So we were confident that this past January, February, that he would get the pacemaker and come back to Ontario. All of his stuff was still in Ontario, and go from there. But it didn't work out.
So he knew he needed a pacemaker. He had a surgery scheduled in Alberta to get a pacemaker. Is that correct?
So that actual date wasn't scheduled. I went in and spoke with his cardiologist after Chet had passed away, which was an experience in itself. But I took some really good notes, and if I'm not mistaken, February 4th, he was actually prescribed a pacemaker defibrillator. So the pacemaker would keep his heart working at a consistent beat. And the defibrillator, if it had stopped, would kick it back into working. And if I'm not mistaken, it would have 6 electrical shocks, to get his heart back working. He ended up not getting it. It was prescribed in February. The procedure was going to be done. So this was in Medicine Hat. The procedure was going to be done in Calgary with a more special cardiologist, apparently, because only 4 to 5 pacemaker patients were prescribed this special pacemaker that he was supposed to be getting. How it's not essential, I have no idea. But anyways, the cardiologist in Calgary ended up not getting back over the course of a few months. Didn't follow up, and it was canceled. So it wasn't technically scheduled, but they knew within a couple weeks of when it would be happening. That would have been in May. So he had a heart attack May 30th and was unresponsive till he died on June 7th.
Wow.
Yeah, it was terrible, actually.
So May
I
30th, you were out in Ontario with the kids.
May 30th, I was at our trailer, which Ched and I bought a couple years before that. But I was at the trailer with my girls. The phone, there's only one little spot where I get decent reception. And so I had my phone sitting on this post. I saw a 403 number. I thought, oh, it's their dad, and I thought it's weird he's calling from the phone number as opposed to FaceTiming or something. But I answered it, and it was on speaker because of the poor reception. And it was actually his mom saying that he had it. So our girls heard everything from day one. So I've been very transparent with them. But she said he's had a heart attack, doesn't look good. He's in the hospital. I'll let you know more what's happening. And the next day, and I was like, well, should we come out there? And she goes, I'm not sure. I'll call you in the morning. So we packed up that night, woke up early on the next morning, roared back home to wait for Grandma's call. And yeah, she said it didn't look good. So I had been thinking, okay, we'll jump in the car on Friday and drive out to Alberta. It'll take us 3 or 4 days to get there, and then, we'll help him through whatever kind of recovery. And we got a phone call on the Wednesday. I got included in the family meeting. So cardiologist, neurologist, nurses, the family, and I was on phone call, and they said, no, it's not looking good. He's not going to pull through. If you drive out and leave Friday, we don't think you're going to make it. If you want your children to say goodbye to their dad, you need to fly out right away. And I was like, oh, I got goosebumps. Ooh, forgive me.
Absolutely. Take your time.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. So we booked a flight for the next morning. We flew out to Calgary June 4th. Got a ride from Calgary back to Redcliffe, which is just outside of Medicine Hat. Went in the house, had a shower to get all the COVID germs off of us, I guess. And then went straight up to the hospital, to the ICU. And that was pretty well it. So it was really bad, actually. It was really bad.
Wow. I,
So,
as far as I'm concerned, we could basically just end this podcast right here. I mean, if that doesn't hit home for people, I don't know what would. I
to
mean,
see, yeah, to see, and my little one was sitting in the kind of the family room of the ICU. I went in with his mom first to kind of see the situation because I didn't exactly know what we were walking into. And my little one was like, well, if he doesn't open his eyes, I'll just make him open his eyes, and I was like, okay, well, you can't hurt him right now. But if you still feel the same way once you get in there, go for it. But I don't think you're gonna feel like that. And so my two girls and I went in to see him. My oldest was up on the bed with him. She has blue eyes and he has blue eyes, and so she was begging him, Daddy, please come back. We're on the blue eyes team. Remember, it's Grady. She was right up there just sobbing. My other little one was sitting, holding her knees, rocking back and forth. And she didn't want me to go near her. She was screaming a little bit. And I just said, buddy, this is the last time you're ever going to get to say anything to your dad while he's still alive with us. You let me know when you get it together. I'll pick you up. You say what you need to say. But I think this is a very important time for you to say something to your dad. And so, I haven't thought about this for a while. So about maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, I don't know, she yelled, Mom. So I went over and I picked her up from the corner of the room, carried her over. She said what she had to say to her unresponsive dad. And that was pretty well it. They called the rest of the family in. Shortly thereafter, they expected him to live for a few minutes to a couple hours. And then my girls and I ended up going back to his mom and dad's house. After that, his mom and dad stayed with him. We woke up the next morning. It was a bad night. It was terrible. We woke up the next morning. Their vehicle wasn't home yet. So all of a sudden I got thinking, oh my God, because it was an eclipse night. It was, all these different things happening. And I thought, holy smokes, if there's going to be any kind of miracle, tonight be the night. And their vehicle wasn't there. So I texted his mom and I said, oh my gosh, is he still alive? And she said, yeah, doesn't look good though. I said, okay, well, can I come back up? And so I asked my girls and they chose. I didn't want to just leave without them, but I didn't want them to go either. But I kind of gave them the choice and they said, no, they didn't want to go. My oldest said she already said goodbye to her dad. And my youngest didn't want to go. So I went back up, and for the next 12 hours, his mom and I tried everything under the sun to try and get his brain to tell his index finger on his right hand to move, or big toe, because they weren't going to give him any kind of medication unless he showed some kind of cognitive ability. They figure he was unresponsive after his heart attack for more than 12 minutes, according to what the ambulance reports and stuff was when the heart attack happened on the 30th. And so at that point in time, there was not enough oxygen going to his brain in order to have any kind of recovery. So, which in my opinion, a defibrillator would have kept oxygen pumping, but I feel like that day surgery would have made a very, very big impact in all of our lives, but it didn't happen.
wow. How old was Ched?
46.
46.
So he died on June 7th. He heart attack on May 30th. We flew out June 4th. He passed away on June 7th. Our oldest turned 9 on June 9th, 2 days later. And then, of course, the next week was filled with, the wake, funeral, celebration of life, all of this. And then it was Father's Day within a week and a half after that. So June was, I guess, pretty incredible, kind of a blur. We stayed out with his mom and dad, so my children's grandma and papa, for the month of June. And then we flew home and kind of everything started all over again in July here. Because of course, everybody here loves him too. So It's been a hell of a summer, actually.
Yeah, well, some people's 2020s have been a lot worse than others, that's for sure, but it's been a roller coaster for everybody.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and to think that, one little tiny, battery operated device installed in an afternoon in the hospital could have prevented this whole thing. Your two children could still have a dad to run up and hug, give him a squeeze.
Yeah. The crazy thing, Josh, was when we went into the Medicine Hat Hospital, there was a ton of empty beds. One nurse actually said to me when we were in the ICU in his curtained off room, she actually said, I'm so sorry about this. Our hospital's been empty practically since March. She's like, I don't even know how real any of this is. So feel free to take your mask off if you want. And I was like, okay, for sure. So we did, of course. But the hospital, it's not like everything was overloaded. So all of these, they deem them all non-essential surgery. And so I looked up the definition of non-essential surgery, and technically it meant not inpatient, really. So no matter what it was, whether it be cancer, kidneys, heart, whatever, if the person was not actually in the hospital, they canceled everything and categorized it as a non-essential surgery.
Well, and this is a really important point here, because Dr. Dina Hinshaw just announced, last week that, hey, we're canceling non-essential surgeries again. So what exactly is non-essential?
Right. So Josh, what's interesting is they actually don't call it non-essential surgeries right now, being that we're on some predicted second wave during the flu season. They're actually being called non-urgent operations. Why would we change the name in the middle of a pandemic? I have no idea.
Is that supposed to be less offensive? Is that supposed to make you sleep better at night? Is that supposed to help your kids?
Yeah, I feel psychologically bells and whistles don't go off when people say non-urgent operations, because it doesn't quite register the same way as non-essential surgeries canceled were, because there was some headlines talking about them. So I feel like they changed the lingo in order to not have a correlation between the two. So people aren't making the connection like maybe they should be. Ultimately, it's the same thing. That's just my opinion. But
well, I'm going to put myself on the full screen here. You listen up, Canada. This second wave is going to kill a whole bunch of more people that didn't need to die, and it's not going to have anything to do with COVID-19. It's going to be your government neglecting these people and leaving them to die from things that are completely treatable. And this goes so far down the rabbit hole right now, most of the people watching this have no clue. We have confirmed from multiple reports that Alberta won't even test you for strep throat right now. You get a sore throat and it's strep throat, that requires antibiotics. You'll be told to call the HealthLink number. They're going to say, "Oh, you might have COVID. Just stay home and isolate." And if you listen to that and you don't ask any questions, you could end up in serious trouble. I mean, we haven't seen anybody die from strep throat in a long time, but people used to die from that before we had antibiotics. So now you're just going to be told to stay home and self-isolate. Don't leave the house, right? And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And by the time you finally start complaining enough to get some treatment, is there going to be any time left to save you? We've had a lady that she knows she's got shingles. So she got on the telehealth thing and they said, "Oh, it's probably a COVID rash. Just stay home and self-isolate." Well, you need treatment for this. And so these are relatively minor conditions compared to what happened to Ched, but people aren't going to get in their cancer screenings. They're not going to get their tumors removed. God knows what else they're going to cancel. And it could be your husband, could be your kid, could be your dad, your mother, left to die by Alberta Health Services under the pretenses and the false pretenses of we're saving somebody else. So all through this pandemic, we've been hearing this, well, if it saves one life. Well, it ain't. It ain't saving anybody's life. It's killing people. It's been killing people all the way through. And nobody seems to know about it or care. Well, the angry Albertan cares. Krista cares. Everybody who shows up at our Saturday protests cares. And it's time we say enough is enough. We pay big money for our socialized medicine, and they should be treating everybody as essential patients with essential procedures. You know, and this goes beyond healthcare. They told us your business might not be essential, your livelihood might not be essential, your right to leave your house might not be essential. You know, they are robbing us of our humanity. This is insane. And now Krista's two beautiful daughters have to go through the rest of their life with no dad on this planet. Thanks to you, Dr. Dina Hinshaw. Thanks to you, Jason Kenney. Jason Kenney, have you reached out to Krista? Are you watching this, Jason Kenney? I bet Krista would like a phone call from you. You know, Dr. Hinshaw, why don't you phone Krista and explain this to her, how her partner's surgery was non-essential? You know, and you get up there, Dr. Hinshaw, and you put on your little fake crocodile tears and you mourn the deaths of every COVID patient lost with an average age of 83 years old and multiple comorbidities. And you get up there and you pretend to cry for them. And I have never heard you mention Jerry's name once. I could only find one video news article, which I played at the beginning of this live stream, that was in reference to Jerry. You know, there's a few print media articles out there. Jonathan Carpe was trying to drum up some support, but nobody's paying any attention. This guy just basically died for nothing, and he's just being completely forgotten. You know, and I
had
go ahead. Yeah, please do.
Josh, back in July too. And I'm not pointing any fingers, but at the same time, I reached out to Alberta Health Services. They knew what was going on. I emailed people. I called the office. I left messages, and come end of July, I believe it was closer to the end of July, I was reading online an article, and I know don't believe everything you read online, but there was a quote from some representative from AHS, Alberta Health Services, that said to that date, which was end of July, there was no known cases where somebody had died from a surgery being canceled. And my bells and whistles went off like you wouldn't believe, because I was thinking, yes, that's a complete lie. Yes, you did know. Yes, you did know. I reached out, I don't know how many times, and I copied Medicine Hat News. I CC'd so many different people on these emails, and nobody, not one single person ever replied or got back to me. But they did know. And then they came out at the end of July and said they had no known people. I don't know. I actually, another thing too, we met with the cardiologist after Chet had passed away. It was really difficult time, but I felt I needed to go in and speak, take some notes, and see what actually his spin on things was, because I thought he was a nice man, of course, but at the same time, what happened? He was in your care, and so, anyways, to make a long story short, we spent about 3 hours in there. He went through dotted I's, crossed T's, so on, whatever. But I took notes. He did make a statement, and I quote, because I had made a comment about how, it's interesting that cancer rates are down, by over 90% in certain states in the US because everybody's dying of COVID now. And he said, I'm so sorry, but I can't comment on that. And they kind of almost had a tear. And he's like, you know what? I have two daughters too. To be honest with you, according to our records, people dying from cardiac arrest in Canada is down 95% since March. And I went, okay. I said, because dying of COVID. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. But we were talking about the same thing. From the horse's mouth.
Wow.
I said, I'm sorry. He said, I'm so sorry. But my hands are tied. He's like, I don't know what to do. He's like, we've got mandated what our procedures are. He's like, I'm so sorry, but I don't know what to do. So maybe doctors should begin speaking amongst themselves if they're feeling a little bit powerless right now, or not sure of what direction to go, or if they're firsthand experiencing or witnessing what's actually happening in the hospitals. If the beds aren't all taken up and everybody's not in there with crazy chest infections, and the media is saying, yes, all the hospitals are full again. The media is telling us that, but the doctors who are actually there and realize, that is not the case, what's happening, and they feel powerless, they feel like their hands are tied. I think maybe power in numbers, they should begin speaking amongst themselves, and try and come up with something. I don't want to see any doctor fired, or I don't want them to stand out to get their family, something to happen to anybody. But at the same time, they're the white coat. They are the people who, other people look up to. And if they're seeing discrepancies in the system compared to the media, I feel like maybe they should begin standing up. Like, we only have one life, and to let all of this stuff happen is a shame. I didn't want to talk to anybody tonight. I don't want to talk to anybody for the past 3 or 4 months. I've been not myself. I'm normally a super social person, but I just, I don't want to connect with people anymore. But I understand there's an overlying pressure from all of this COVID regime, and I feel like right now is the time. They're calling this second wave, and with Jerry passing away, if anybody has read his Facebook, in middle of April, he went into the doctor's office to an appointment, and the doctor wouldn't come out and see him. The secretary was the one who told him that his pacemaker was canceled, not even a nurse, not a doctor. So he sat there and said, well, I'm not leaving until I get answers. And he sat there and wrote on social media some rants for the next maybe month. But while he was sitting in the doctor's office, he started off. And he actually said, what do I have to die in order to make a change with this? And he started really kind of getting onto the political side of it. And so he actually did die. There actually are kids with no dad. My kids go to sleep crying every other night right now. And he passed away in June. And if we could stop some deaths that are probably going to happen again. I just saw that Alberta canceled 500 non-urgent operations recently.
In Edmonton alone. That was just Edmonton since October 9th.
Wow.
500 people, potentially just like Jerry, were just told to take a hike because, hey, we got to make room for COVID patients who have a 99.5% chance of surviving unless you're over the age of 80 with multiple health conditions.
And like I say, when we were in the hospital with Ched passing away, the one floor was empty, prepared for COVID patients who ended up never going there, right? So if there's any message we can get across, I think it would be maybe we can give them some steps on how, if they really do feel like they need a procedure done and they know how serious it might be to their life, technically you'd have to be an inpatient. So the cardiologist, I'm sorry to say this, but he actually said, I was pumped up, and I said, so you're telling me if he had a faked a heart attack, went into emerge, and they admitted him, he would have got his pacemaker defibrillator. And he goes, yeah, he would have gotten it. I said, so why? I looked online for all of these definitions. Non-essential surgery, means that a person isn't in decline, but if a person's health begins to decline, if their quality of life is not anywhere where it used to be, and if there's emergency situations on the horizon, they could have been reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and a doctor had the power or the right to change it from non-essential into urgent or actually getting it done. And Ched had zero follow-up. He had a med change within the past 5 weeks before he died. His heart was still only working at 23%. He was prescribed a defibrillator pacemaker that only 4 to 5 patients out of every 100 receive, and he was hospitalized twice in the past 18 months, and it was still non-essential.
This just reeks of criminal negligence. Please tell me you have lawyers beating down your door that want to represent this case. And
I've reached out to a number of different lawyers, more so back in June and July. Not one single one from Alberta or Ontario. I think it's not one single one was willing to actually have a conversation with me other than a follow-up phone call and saying I'm sorry. And then they would recommend, or they would refer me to another group of 2 or 3 lawyers that I could kind of navigate myself. But no, there's zero representation at this moment.
wow, Alberta Health Services is just in an absolute shambles right now. We have a friend up north in northern Alberta, and she blacked out in Walmart because she put on a mask and didn't agree with her, and she fell down and whacked her head, and she's having a real struggle right now. I mean, her language skills have like she really has a traumatic brain injury in just a horrible way. And Alberta Health Services is doing nothing, absolutely nothing. They won't give her they won't scan her. They won't do anything. They say, "Oh, you're fine, you're fine." She's getting worse. You know, we look at videos of her shortly after the accident, and her speech was pretty rough. Well, we look at her speech now, and it's worse. You know, and nobody's helping her. Nobody's stepping up. You know, Alberta Health Services. I mean, we should just start calling them Alberta Death Services. I mean, like, this is insane. I mean, are they and are they even saving these? This is just absolutely ludicrous. So now, Jonathan Carpe of the JCCF, he's been writing articles about you and Jerry's case, but he hasn't stepped in to represent you at all.
I heard that. No, no, short answer, no. I believe I received a couple notices a month and a bit ago from people in Ontario who maybe subscribe to JCCF newsletter. I'm not sure. They're actually naturopaths, and one was a doctor, and they reached out to me and said individually, they're not affiliated with anybody whatsoever, but they reached out to me at different times and said, "Oh, wow, are these guys representing you?" And I was like, "Oh, no, there is no representation at the moment." And then when I realized, oh, it's the JCCF, I thought, "Oh, okay." And then when I realized, oh, it was John Carpe who wrote that, one of my first articles when I was still out in Alberta in June. Apparently they're using it for Ched's story is such a prominent one. They're using it. I guess they're using the copyright of it. I'm not sure. I wasn't aware of any of it, but I guess they're using it for funding purposes for them. So it is, but there is no representation. I kind of feel like maybe it's more of a political stance as opposed to a legal stance that they may be taking, because I've reached out a few times since, and I haven't received any support. So other than that first story, but.
Okay, so the JCCF is only interested in kind of gaining the publicity around the case, not actually interested in fighting the case, apparently. Jonathan Carpe, if you want to come on this program and explain that decision to me, I'm sure you have your reasons. I would love to know why you're not representing this family in this matter. To me, like this, and I actually quite enjoy Jonathan Carpe's articles.
As do I.
He's been right on. I mean, he's like, and I mean, this is something we've been talking about for months. Is this whole thing reeks of criminal negligence causing death? There was no cost-benefit analysis to locking us down. There was no cost-benefit analysis as to canceling people's surgeries and denying them medical treatment. And people are dying as a result of it. Someone has dropped the ball. They have not been doing their job, and I think they should be jailed. They should be held responsible. I mean, to me, this is criminal behavior. When you hold an appointed office like Dr. Dina Hinshaw, or even Jason Kenney for that matter. I mean, Jason Kenney, he's just completely dropped the ball on this whole thing as far as I'm concerned, especially considering, we should have been seeing tens of thousands of deaths in Alberta alone. From the models that were released, completely fraudulent models that had no basis in reality, yet all of these people just marched in lockstep to implement this, and where's the accountability? To me, this is why places like the JCCF exist. If they're not going to fight this case, who is? And if there is a lawyer out there who can take this case on, Krista, I've heard you've been keeping very detailed notes throughout this entire thing. There's a lot of evidence out there. Someone should at least give this thing take a kick at the can here, because there's some people that need to pay for this. And I mean, at the very least, I think your girls deserve a college fund. If nothing else, I would be more than happy to see my tax dollars spent on your kids getting a college education out of this at a bare minimum. I mean, this is an atrocity. Socialized medicine, and if this would have happened in the States, at least he could have paid for it. You think they would have turned him away?
Yeah. It's incredible. And the psychology behind the way we're all dealing with things is very different between me, my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter. Everybody's acting, the behaviors are unnavigable sometimes, and certainly unprecedented in our family. So I mean, the conversations we're having, the outbursts the kids are having, the way they're treating the cat, the dog, at certain times, the way they're talking to cousins, and I stand back sometimes because it's certainly out of character for them both. And so then we have a conversation, to try and talk about things, and then one of them will have a dream, and then that triggers something all over again. We just had Halloween, and somebody made a comment. I bring their dad's name up every single day, on purpose. He's an amazing human being. He was here. Now he's not. I want the kids to know that he would be super proud of them, and, and doing what they're doing. But there's technically no closure right now. It wasn't a bad car accident. It wasn't it wasn't something predicted. And then, my girls, they don't know all of the details. Of course, they're quite young, 6 and 9 right now. But at the same time, I'm being fairly transparent with them, using language, that's not painting a gruesome picture, but language that, is letting them know that I'm confused, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm angry too, because I think they need to know that they're not the only ones experiencing such confusion, because nobody knows why he died. Like, nobody knows, right? So right after the fact, I was out with Ched's mom. We went to go request his official death, our cause of death at the hospital. They wouldn't give it to us. And so then I said to his mom, call them, call them back. So we sat outside the hospital. She was on the line. We got the numbers from a nurse inside, talking to records, this and that, whatever, on hold, put through, and this lady finally came on and was like, usually it takes me about 10 business days, but I haven't been very busy. The hospital's empty. She said, so I should be able to have it in about 5 business days. So we thought, okay, 5 to 10. So that was that. And we ended up waiting 8 days, 10 days. And so there was zero word. So we called back, and that lady went on leave, a 10-day leave at that point in time. And they had launched 3 days before that an internal investigation at the Medicine Hat Hospital into his death, which his mom was thinking, great, that's at least they're doing something. Where my mind was thinking, no, they're dotting all I's, crossing all T's to make damn sure there's no liability falling back where it needs to be, where it could potentially fall. And I think his death certificate or the cause came out something like 42 days after it was requested, when they said it was going to be 5. And we were blown away. I don't know if anything was changed, but it was right after that we had went public, and I had made a statement saying that one of the nurses came into the room in the ICU and said to me, it was just his mom and I in there, and Jed was lying there in the bed unresponsive. And she came in, I think the nurse was trying to be nice, but she said, so we'll put this down as a COVID death? I was like, what? And she goes, well, it is related. And I said, I thought he tested negative to the virus coming in. Well, oh, no, he did, but it is related. I said, if you put this down as a COVID-19 death, it'll be on. Like, and she kind of was like, oh, I'm sorry, not to upset you, whatever. And I said, no, I'm serious. He would haunt us for the rest of our life. This is exactly opposite to what needs to be down on paper. And she was like, I'm really sorry. And she backed out of the room. So her being innocent about it just goes to show how many nurses, doctors, are trying to be supportive to families when they're in a death situation at the hospitals right now. And they put them down as COVID-19 because let's get this virus. They need to know how many people are dying because of COVID-19 in an innocent reach to try and add, I don't know, media coverage or numbers to the whole situation. But it's a lie. It's a false inflation of all of these numbers in terms of COVID deaths when people are actually passing away because of whatever they might have had before. And I don't know. I feel like the Medicine Hat Hospital had a few things to cover up. In my opinion, I'm not an expert, but at the same time, the 42 days it took them to get his official cause of death to us, when we were told it was going to be 5, and somebody went on a leave for 10 days in the meantime, with an internal investigation launched in the meantime, blows my mind. It's not normal daily business procedure. Like, the whole thing, I don't know. The whole situation it makes me sick, actually.
Well, I can't agree more with you on the numbers side of things. There are no trustworthy numbers that we can even use. And you know what?
There's so many details, Josh. So many details I could give you over this past 6 months that just, it would blow your mind.
Well, if people would just pay it, I know everybody's watching these numbers at home, but if people actually paid attention to them, that's what woke me up way back in February. I was watching, these overwhelmed hospitals in Italy, and we saw the bodies on the streets in Wuhan, China, people getting welded into their apartments. And then headlines came out. The first one I saw said, 90% of the people that died in Italy did not have COVID-19 listed on their birth certificate. And then a couple of weeks later, another article came out that said it was actually 99% of those who died in Italy do not have COVID-19 listed on their birth certificate because they had several underlying medical conditions that were what killed them. They died with COVID, not of COVID. They were already seriously ill. When we look at the numbers in Alberta, we've had, a little over 300 deaths. Only 9 of those people that died were quote unquote healthy people before COVID. Everybody else.
They still probably had an underlying health issue. The way the immune system works, I have a natural health business over the last 6 years, and I think anybody's defense against anything is to give your kids lots of, great water, lots of sleep, local, organic, whole foods, stay off processed, stay off sugar, get lots of outdoor time, and boost immune systems so that they can actually withstand, different viruses and bacteria and such, and to put so much focus right now on cases are rising, cases are going up, what about boosting immune systems? Like, I don't understand. The most simple defense is to boost people's immune systems, which we could do over the course of a few months, but there's absolutely zero education on it. And so when we talk about our healthcare system, there's actually no money in people staying healthy.
Well, we came just a couple of weeks ago. We saw an article that said 80% of those who died from COVID were vitamin D deficient. I mean, vitamin D is there a cheaper supplement available? I mean, like there's no excuse that they could, like, just as a prophylactic. They should be just saying, hey, take some vitamin D, take a vitamin C once a day. Maybe take a zinc. I mean, heck, eat a piece of fruit. Go stand in the sun, maybe. I mean, it's just such simple thing. We haven't heard any of it. I mean, Dr. Dina Hinshaw spent 8 years or more in school, and she hasn't said a word about how to. And then the government's actions are completely the opposite of what would be needing to go on to be healthy. I mean, they don't tell you to stay inside. They lock the old people indoors for 8 months, 9 months now. Just about 9 months. Solitary confinement. We treat our murderers better than we treat our senior citizens right now. So they're all vitamin D deficient. They already have underlying medical conditions. I think, from what I see, it almost seems like the government is trying to kill these people just to drive up those numbers so they can lock us down again. I mean, there's no justification for any of this other than the complete, total takeover of your life. It's almost, it's hard to imagine that they don't want you dead at this point. It's completely insane. And you know what? I just have to go back to this Jonathan Carpe issue one more time. I have a real problem with this. I'm looking, and I should have put this on the screen for our viewers to see, but I'm looking at his article here, and the headline is Jerry Dunham was killed by the lockdown, not by COVID-19. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. The article is by John Carpe. John Carpe, you said in the title of that article that Jerry Dunham was killed by the lockdown, not by COVID-19. Now, we understand what a violation of our charter rights is. That's when the government gets between you and your rights. So who created that lockdown, Mr. Carpe? Was that AHS or was that the government? Right? Why are you not fighting this case, Mr. Carpe? I want an answer to this question. Because to me, I just don't understand why he has not taken on this case. And I would like to know. So, Mr. Carpe, if you see this, and I know you're going to hear about it, come on this program and explain to me why this is an unwinnable case for you. I would like to know. And frankly, even if it is unwinnable, I would like to see someone fight it anyways. Just for the sake of Krista and her children. I mean, they deserve answers. And they know that somebody's responsible for this. Somebody made that decision, right? Whether it was the doctor in Medicine Hat or the cardiologist in Calgary, somebody made that decision, and Jerry's blood is on their hands, and they should pay for it. Why do these people get a free pass? Why won't a lawyer step up to the plate and take care of this? Do what needs doing. What kind of country is this? Why do we even have lawyers? Why do we have the JCCF if they're not going to step up and fight this kind of case? This is obscene. And you know what? And if we don't have lawyers that'll fight a case like this, you know what? We might as well just pack Canada in. It's done. Just, life is never going to be the same. If we can't hold government accountable for their mistakes, and if we can't put people in prison for sending people home to die from completely preventable illnesses, we could have given them a life-saving treatment. That doesn't seem to me like Jerry should be dead today. Why can no one be held accountable? And Jonathan Carpe, if you want to come on this program, I will give you all the time in the world to explain why you are not fighting this case. And if there is another lawyer out there who can take this on, get in touch with me and I will put you in touch with Krista. Because somebody needs to do something about this. Because, now we've already had 500 surgeries in Edmonton that have been canceled. How many people are going to die? Like, if there's another 10, 15, 20 people that die, hey, that starts to smell, I smell class action lawsuit. This is, and these deaths are happening all across Canada. Why can't we have a class action lawsuit in the Supreme Court that covers the entire country for all of those families that have lost somebody due to the government's overreaction and negligence, caused by this COVID-19 pandemic? You got to put the pandemic part in quotation marks because pandemic means everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. Well, we're at I don't even know if 1% of Alberta has caught this bogus virus yet. And we're spending $50 on every test minimum. We're testing 10,000 people a day. We're just, money's going out the door. And, oh, hey, but you need a pacemaker? Oh, there's no time for that. Yeah, we're too busy. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, you had a stroke. Oh, you know what? Those are COVID symptoms. Maybe you should just stay home and self-isolate. Like, what kind of upside-down, topsy-turvy world are we living in when a dad of 2 young girls gets sent home with a serious heart condition that is totally treatable? I mean, this isn't Canada. This is hell on earth, people. And if we don't go to war and fight this back, it only gets worse from here. What next? At what point will somebody stand up who can do something about this? I mean, like, Jonathan Carpe, love your articles, man. But you know what? Hey, I write posts every day. I do this live stream. You're an actual lawyer. Where are you right now, buddy? I'd like to see you fighting some of this stuff. Like, oh, good. You got some social distancing tickets withdrawn. Oh, what a huge win. Oh, this goes on and on, Krista. I'm so sick of 2020.
No, I know. I don't get it. I also don't know what to do. I had a serious conversation with my girls the other night, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to be speaking with the fellow in Alberta," and they're like, "Why?" And I said, "Guys, because I actually don't know what to do. I don't know why Dad didn't get his pacemaker defibrillator. I don't know if it's the government. I don't know if it's the doctors. I don't know if it's the province. And we went over all these different things. I said, however, all I can do right now is to try and show you guys that Mommy tried her best to try and raise awareness and prevent other deaths from happening this fall." And I said, "Dad's already gone, but he would not want this to happen to anyone else. And being that the pattern that's happening right now is sucking people right in. Mass media is sucking people right in. Now we're not talking about death toll like they were in March, April. Now we're talking about cases, because cases sound like a bigger number because they're technically the death toll isn't big enough, And I said, all we can do is try and teach people how to live if they need to have something, if they get something canceled, so that they don't feel helpless. And hopefully we can save a few lives using your dad's story." I said, "Guys, I don't know what to do." And in tears, the three of us, Dad's not coming back, but at the same time, he would want us to make sure that he doesn't die in vain. Like, if we don't talk about this, it's over. It's done. He's gone, swept under the rug. Who's accountable? Zero people. Now there's no closure for me and my kids. My kids grow up, and I know I have a natural health business. I know damn well that whatever happens from 0 to 12 years old creates patterns in us as adults. And I don't want my kids having adjustment issues, neglect issues, all of these different things that can spawn. They think their dad left them. Why did he leave me? And so we talk about things so that some of these issues can kind of be buffed out right now, instead of my children holding on to them and they spurring up, later in life. So I just feel like the only thing I can possibly do right now, because there is zero representation, I actually don't know what to do. I feel like avenues have been exhausted. Maybe it's just me. I'm not in the best place of my life either mentally. Not bad, but, so I just told my kids that the only thing we can do is try and spread awareness to try and help save lives based on Daddy's death. He's not here, but hopefully we can use it to try and help people navigate this so-called second wave. And I do say quotes again.
Well, I've got to warn the audience, and this is something David Dixon, my friend who does the Saturday rallies with me, he's been really trying to drive home. Winter is coming. COVID has eradicated the flu. The flu no longer exists. It's just like heart attacks. Nobody's dying of heart attacks or strokes now because they're all COVID deaths. Pneumonia's been wiped out. So anything that any medical complaint is going to be labeled as COVID, and you are going to need to fight for treatment. What happened to Jerry happened at the beginning of the lockdown when nobody knew what was going on. Well, now we know what's going on. We know they're going to send you home to die. And now that you know that, if you get some kind of sickness, and I don't care if it's COVID or what it is, you are going to have to beat down the door of that hospital and make sure you get the treatment that you need. And you know what? Let's say that, and even if you, heaven forbid, you end up with this COVID crap and you end up you're one of the ones who's getting really sick, they're going to throw you on a freaking ventilator. And that's the last thing you need to be on. So people need to read up. The Alberta government has put out a PDF. It's like 60 pages of how they're going to treat you if you're a COVID patient. And basically you read it over and it sounds like, oh yeah, nothing's changed since the beginning of the year when the World Health Organization put out their guidelines and recommendations for doctors. They want to stick you on a ventilator because it's safer for the medical staff so that you can't cough or sneeze on them. And, so never before in our history have you needed to be more educated on your own health care than now. You need to, doctors hate it. They're always saying, don't you go on Google. You let me do the diagnosing. Well, I'm telling you right now, that getting on Google and figuring out what's wrong with you on your own could very well save your life because they're going to do everything they can to get you out the door to self-isolate at home. So if you know that you've got something serious wrong, if you think it's strep throat, if you know it's shingles, if you know it's pneumonia, because you could have bacterial pneumonia, and one of the treatments they're recommending is for COVID is steroids. Well, you get, and I can't remember which way it goes, but you get, because there's bacterial pneumonia and viral pneumonia. One of them, you get on steroids, it stands a 30% chance of killing you because you took the steroids. So people are going to need to know what treatments they should be requesting. They need to look up their symptoms and decide whether it's COVID or not, because the testing is meaningless. You might test positive for COVID, but have a completely different disease, because you could have had a cold last year that triggered the COVID test, So, and if you've got old people in care homes, it's just, people need advocates like never before because you just can't trust these people. And unfortunately, we were talking about the doctors. You had mentioned how, they don't really want to say anything. They got to keep everything on the down low. Well, this is one of those moments in history where silence is violence. If you're not willing to speak up, what good are you? What kind of doctor are you? If you're a doctor that's just keeping his head down, right? My parents always said, well, the noisy pheasant gets shot. And that seems to be the motto for modern society now. You stick your head out, someone's going to chop it off. And it's like, well, where does honor fit into that? Where does bravery fit into that? Where does just being a decent human being fit into that philosophy? Canada wouldn't have ever existed in the way that we knew it had people adopted this, the noisy pheasant gets shot mentality. Canada was a great place to live because great people fought and died for it. And here we are. Oh, I'm just going to follow the rules and keep quiet and everything's just going to go away. Everything's just going to go away. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to ignore it all. And now's not the time for that, people. Now's the time to fight back because we're screwed right now. We are totally screwed. We're coming into flu season. 1 billion people around the world get the flu every year. That's going to be 1 billion COVID cases. Jason Kenney says he's not going to lock us down again. Well, Jason Kenney claims he never locked us down at all anyway. So he could actually do worse than what he did to us back in March. And he'd still say, we never had a lockdown. It's not a lockdown until you're in prison and we have guards and stuff. And, we haven't welded your door shut yet. So, when we get 1 billion COVID cases going on, you betcha they're going to lock it down again. So it's either wake up now or forever hold your peace.
True.
And there's a lot of people, David Dixon is messaging me here. He says, where is Chief Justice Catherine Fraser, the last line of defense against the government? And these are quotes from her. The rule of law means that no one is above the law, including the government. Another quote from Justice Fraser. Democracy cannot triumph over tyranny without the rule of law and an independent judiciary. Okay, Justice Fraser, where the hell are you? We're waiting, Justice Fraser. Come on, somebody step in here. Give us a little support. These are some of the most highly educated people in the world, and they're all drinking the Kool-Aid. It's mind-blowing.
They are, and people don't want to stand alone right now. People are worried about losing jobs. People are worried about, there's so much, even as something as simple as some, and don't get me started, but some mask wearing. People are actually embarrassed if they forget a mask. Meanwhile, it's the same mask they've had in their car since March over and over again that they put on. And I've spoken to, I don't know how many people about it. They're like, oh, I just don't want to be bothered. I just don't want to be bothered with what people say. I just don't want to be bothered with it. I just get in, I get my stuff, I get out. It's fine. And I'm thinking, yeah, no, whatever. On that, in that concept, fine, whatever. If you need to slide in, slide out, and that's the way you feel, okay. But at the same time, isn't this a pandemic? Isn't this a deadly global virus? So if you're breathing anything into these shitty masks and using it 480 times over the next 5 months, I'm sorry, is that healthy? Like, the concepts behind this, just none of it makes sense to me. And with Ched, pacemaker fibrillator procedure being canceled, day surgery, not even taking up a bed in terms of COVID-19 patients, not even taking up a bed, and that being canceled, and not the doctor telling them, the secretary telling them, and all of these misconceptions going on. It just, I don't know. I think people are worried. I think people want to save the peace. I feel like there's a threshold in politics, and it has not been reached yet. Things haven't gotten that bad for people to stand up. And so people get pushed to their limits. But when you've got the masses on the same page, your limits can get pushed even a little bit more because everybody's in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. And the couple of outliers who are like, what are you guys even doing? Are all of a sudden called conspiracy theorists, and they're ostracized for actually bringing up question when other people are too embarrassed because they don't want to be judged by thy neighbor. Meanwhile, that same neighbor is going to be living in such fear, they will rat you off if you leave your house during a quarantine because they don't want to catch what you got. And that's the sad part. The psychology behind all of this is the sad part to me, because I'm actually the minority now and my children's dad's dead, but I'm the minority, right? Like, I feel like I have a story, I have something to say, but 95% of the people around me think opposite of what I do right now. And I actually, honest to God, don't know where to go from here. It's I don't know.
Well, this pandemic, if it's done anything, it's revealed who actually is able to critically think. It's revealed who is actually compassionate, who actually is able to, I've lost a lot of friends and family over this whole thing. And I look back and it's like, that hurts. It stings. But what, the thing I've realized is, because months before this started, I just thought I was antisocial. I thought I was a hermit. And the reality is I was just hanging around the wrong people, and if there's one good thing that's happened with this pandemic, it's people have revealed their true colors, and I've said, man, we are the voice of reason. We're the voice of compassion. We have the truth on our side. And you know what? You mentioned, you want your kids to be able to look back one day and say, yeah, Mom fought for us. Yeah, well, you know what? It's even bigger than that for me. I'm going to get judged by God one day. And if God saw me sitting here doing absolutely nothing as the world goes to hell, I'm going to pay for that. And, I'm out here doing this for my kids, but I know God's watching too. And he... I can't even imagine being in his shoes, looking down at this place, watching this all happen. It's just, and Kenny claims to be a Catholic. It's just like, hey, let's starve all the mom and pop businesses right out of business and make their kids go hungry and make sure that the middle class is done forever. But hey, we save some old people. Maybe.
And kept big box retail rocking.
Oh yeah. Amazon's loving this. Costco's loving it. It never ends. All right, Krista, we've been going for an hour and 9 minutes. Time flies on this podcast. I don't even know why I try to keep them to a time limit. But I'm not just going to cut you loose, though. Is there anything else you want to mention to the audience before we go?
You know what? I would just say if you are one, and whatever a person believes in the healthcare system, they believe, they don't, whatever. If you are one of those people who was on the list, who had a procedure canceled, or will have a procedure, a surgery, something canceled that you know deep down inside needs to get done, I would say it's in your best interest to somehow, and if you feel it's critical, serious, because Ched tried to go to the media, he tried to talk to the doctor, he tried to talk to people, but being kind of complacent and very mellow, he was trying to ask questions as opposed to being an advocate for his own health. I'm sure, using him as an example, if he had have not faked a heart attack, but if he had went into Emerge, and said, I'm having heart, something going on, and they admitted him as an inpatient, I was told that he would have gotten his procedure done. So if any of you guys out there, or somebody has had some kind of a procedure canceled, where it's not just a skin thing or a nose job, or whatever, but it's something that has been brewing up inside you, and you feel like that is your next step, and it's been canceled, I highly urge you to, if your doctor doesn't answer you, because they're good people too, they're in a spot, right? But I highly urge to do something, to go to ER, become an inpatient, and then whatever needed to be done will probably be more likely to get done, because the criteria for Ched would have been, if he was an inpatient, he would have got the pacemaker defibrillator. In Kitchener, Ontario, they already spent tens of thousands of dollars to keep him alive over those 3 weeks, where his heart had issues 18 months ago. And then now all of a sudden, all that money, if you think of it in terms of financial decision, all that money in the system is lost. They tried to keep him alive for so long and ended up, it worked. Pacemaker was the next step, defibrillator, and then it got canceled. So all that money that was put into him, technically speaking, what for, right? So if you feel like you need to get some kind of procedure done, somehow get yourself turned into an inpatient, and advocate for yourself. Doctors, I think, are trying their best. They say their hands are tied, but I think everybody's scared. The fear factor is pretty high right now across the board. So I would say, if you feel like you need something done to save your life, you need to become an inpatient and advocate. Go to the media, advocate, get something done.
Yeah, that sums it up. So you've nailed it. Well, I just was peeking over some of the comments. I've got the greatest audience in the world. If you need a little support, Krista, go read those comments over when you're done. There's a lot of...
You know what? I need a lot of support. Some days I'm having trouble waking up in the morning, and then other times having trouble going to bed at night, having trouble going out. Lots of people contact me from across Canada. A couple people in the United States saying, random people saying, hey, just read your story, blah, blah, blah. I too have had certain things canceled. Don't know what to do. Something inside me said to reach out. So there are people reaching out to us. But at the same time, I'm a little lost right now. So I will read your comments. Thanks a lot, Josh.
I noticed, I saw, and I really should have been thinking ahead here. I can probably add the link to the description after. Is there still a GoFundMe going on?
Maybe.
Somebody else is running it, I think.
So I don't know. Yeah. So a friend of mine, who's a chiropractor near the town where we live, she called it Angels for Atlan and Radian, and it was a GoFundMe, which we received lots of support from in like June, July, but in June, July, mostly August, after Ched passed away. I'm going to be honest. I didn't have too much to do with it. I've been in a bit of a fog. But if people are interested, it was called Angels for Atlan and Radian.
I'll see if I...
If it's If it's even still there, I'm not sure. But thank you very much for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Actually, I really appreciate it. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on the show and doing this with us. Took a lot of balls. And you know what? I'd have to say you are a COVID symptom super spreader, because I was starting to get a little sniffly, and I think my eyes were leaking. And I think there's probably a lot of that going around in my audience right now. So, don't get tested, people.
yeah, right. I've been so choked for the last few months. I actually couldn't speak about it. There's been a few other people mentioned to me about speaking out, and I canceled everything. I couldn't bring myself to it when the topic comes up. I get more emotional than logical about the whole thing. However, something has shifted this past few days with me and my children. They've been asking me more questions in terms of the kind of the legality side of it all. I have zero answers for them. So I feel like it's in their best interest and mine for me to, since I have no answers, to raise awareness, try and help other people, save a few lives that might be canceled in the same way Ched's is, and go from there. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't really, the topic doesn't come up too much with me in such a dynamic as tonight. But I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on, and I can see why you're doing it. You don't want this to happen to anybody else's kids.
Yeah, I actually don't know I don't know what else to do, to be honest. And I don't want, and I know damn well we're going into winter, lack of sunshine, lack of vitamin D. I'm aware of all of this. So I feel like if I don't do something kind of right now with my life, in order to be a good example and a good leader for my children in the next few months when it's more dark,
people are going to die.
I don't know.
People are going to die. That's what's going to happen, because they aren't going to get the treatment they need. That's what's going to happen, and that's why you're here. And thank you so much, and my audience thanks you for being here. I know it wasn't easy. I was even worried. I'm kind of a sarcastic jerk, and it was like, how am I going to do this interview?
I almost canceled on you this afternoon, actually.
Well, thank you for being here, Krista. I can't only imagine how difficult it would be to come on a program like this and do what you've done. And you've done it with grace and dignity, and you've done a wonderful job. And your speaking was crystal clear. And even though, clearly there's a lot of emotions here, but they didn't get the better of you. It just came through. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot, Josh. I appreciate it too. Thanks. The more the story gets out, I think the better. So, well,
awesome. All right, I'm going to. I'll cut the audience loose. You and I can chit chat for a minute. And angry Albertans, thanks for tuning in. Freedom fighters, keep up the fight, and let's stop any stories like this from happening again. Although with 500 surgeries canceled in Edmonton since October 9th, you know darn well the next Jerry is just around the corner. So the time is now, people. If there's a doctor watching out there that wants to speak out, now's the time. If there's a lawyer that wants to go give Jason Kenney a smack across the bow, now's the time. It ain't going to get any easier. So join the fight. Get off the couch. Thanks for tuning in, Freedom Fighters. Krista, thank you so much for doing this. And if you ever want to come back on again, if there's something you forgot that you wanted to say, just let me know. We'll do it again. Or if there's an update or what have you. So anyhow.
thanks.
All right. Goodbye, angry Albertans.